It's Survival Solutions USA. In this video, I'm going to be looking at and demoing how to install a hasty fence. You might want to do this in a urban or suburban survival situation because of a tornado or a hurricane or some other man-made or natural disaster. You may need to fence your property in order to secure your belongings or even fortify your home or some other position that you're in. And what I want to focus on particularly here is rapid fencing. You could put this up very quickly in a couple hours with a couple people, or even one person putting up very quickly, allowing you to have a rapidly deployable fence that wasn't there 4 or 5 hours before. And in this video we're going to just demo how I would construct this fence and the tools and items that I would use to do the construction of the fencing with. The first thing you're going to need is some kind of fencing. You can see here I just have wire fencing. It's about 3 feet tall and in a big roll, and I'm going to be using these metal stakes. They're very easy to put in rapidly, and you're going to need as much fencing as you're going to need, as many of these stakes as you're going to need to go the length of the fencing which you're planning on putting in. Other items that you're going to want, and I think that you'll find very helpful, are going to be a good pair of wire cutter pliers. A combo is going to be best. You can see there I've got a nice pair of pliers here, and these allow me to twist the wire. That's how I'm going to be securing the fencing to the posts, is by just using, this is a 16 gauge galvanized steel wire, and these allow me to cut and twist that wire closed on them. You might also want a nice pair of gloves. It's going to keep your hands from getting cut up. And zip ties may help you if you're doing this by yourself. You can zip tie the first section of fencing onto the first post to get started quickly, and then you can come back and you can wire that fencing back onto the post and either leave the zip ties or take them off. Another item that you'll find really important, and this is really key to making this fencing situation be a rapid fencing situation, is a post driver. And this is basically just a metal tube. I'll zoom out here so you can see it better. This is basically just a metal tube with handles on it, and you're going to use that to drive these steel posts into the ground. And so this just slips over the top, so this would be opposite, but this would slip over the top of the fence post here, and it would just be used to drive it in. It's usually, they're weighted. This particular one is basically solid steel from here to there, so they give you some weight and you're able to just hammer these down in, even if the post is above your head. And that can be particularly difficult if you're trying to use a hammer to do that. It's going to take hours, or this just takes a couple minutes to drive each post into the ground. So if you're planning on deploying fencing rapidly, you're going to need one of these. They can be spendy, 40, 50 bucks, but I think they're well worth the money if you're wanting to put in a fence. Even if you're not doing it rapidly, if you just want to get it done, these pole drivers can be very, very helpful. So if you're putting in a fence by yourself, zip ties are definitely what you're going to want. I'm able to just zip tie the top here and then move on down the row attaching to the fence posts, and then just come back by with very quickly and just throw a piece of wire on lower, and of course I'll put some other pieces of wire on this, and then I'll come back and I'll wire where the zip ties were and just leave the zip ties. But definitely, if you're going to be doing this by yourself, do not underestimate the value of these zip ties. They are awesome. They speed things up so much. There's nothing magical to the way I'm attaching this wire to the fence and to the post. What I'm doing though is I'm making sure to bring it around and through, and this is actually the outside of the fence, so that I don't have any pokey portions inside the fence where I'm going to be, or where animals might be, maybe livestock or pets, if you let them out of your home. And I'm making sure to go over this and then under it, so that we're tightening down on this, so that this doesn't, if I didn't do that, this could move about those 3 or 4 inches. It's more like 3 inches here. And I'm not interested in that. I want it to be staying down, so I am making sure to go over the top or and then under the bottom there, and then just tighten it down the first couple times by hand. Then I'm just using my pliers, coming in here, grabbing this. Don't do this too many times because you'll just break the wire. Again, I'm using galvanized wire. If you use non-galvanized, just regular like steel wire, it's going to rust on you. The galvanized is just like the fencing, and there won't be any rusting. So I'll just tighten that down a couple more times, moving out so that I'm not still twirling that section again. You'll pop it if you're not careful. So here is the fencing that I have put together today. Driven in a number of posts and have all the fencing either wired or zip tied to the fencing. You can see it down there, all the way from there down to here. And now I want to just discuss what I think this fence is going to do for me. What I think some of the benefits are the fence is going to provide. And those are as follows. I think 50% of the value of a fence, at least 50%, is the psychological deterrent that a fence creates. Now, there's no fence that a human being can create that another human being can't get around, whether that's digging under, smashing through, cutting through, going up and over, or any number of different ways that a fence can be gotten around or cut through. But I think you get 50% of the value of a fence from the psychological deterrent. Somebody's got to come up here and they've got to say, I'm entering someone else's property that's very clearly defined. I can't accidentally stumble into their yard. You know, it's different if you look outside and you have no fence in your own house and somebody's maybe walking a dog on the front yard of your property. Okay, just a little bit along the road. It's a completely another thing to have had a fence and find somebody with their dog inside your fence in your backyard. You know they had to know, hey, I'm crossing somebody's property line. And so there's a psychological deterrent that's going to be created. So that's one of the reasons I went with this hastily deployable fence. You can rapidly get it out there, and it very clearly defines that. And in a survival situation that's going to be an urban or a suburban situation, a fence is going to very clearly define, hey, this is mine and this is not mine. And it's going to make an individual have to psychologically make that decision. Am I crossing this fence? Am I getting into this individual's property? Another thing that a fence does is it creates an early warning device. If you're close enough to the fence, now if you're 300 yards away from a fence, you're probably not going to hear this, maybe on a very quiet evening. But if an individual chooses to climb this fence, whether that's at day or in the middle of the day or at night, I'm going to hear them coming up and over this fence. I'm going to hear some kind of sound before they would be maybe slipping through a door that was left unlocked or climbing through a window or kicking down the door. I'm going to have some kind of, if I'm paying attention to my situation, I'm going to have some kind of sound that's going to be created by them coming through this fence. At night, you can use a fence either by feeling the vibrations as an early warning device or by hearing it again as an individual would come up and over. So it's going to do two things. It creates a psychological deterrent. Even though I'm under no illusions that this fence would actually stop a full-grown man in a vehicle or a full-grown individual with a pair of wire cutters, it is a psychological deterrent, and it's going to allow me to hear as somebody chooses to come through my fence. So those are the two things that I think the fencing gives you, the benefit that it gives you. At this point, I want to talk about how I would deploy a fencing in an urban or suburban situation. And I'm going to use a marker board here just to draw out some property lines. Let's say that this is your yard in a suburban situation. Okay? And let's say that this is your home on that property. And let's say that this is the driveway coming into your property. Okay? And I'm thinking, right over here, there's another home just like this, another home just like that. And let's say that you don't even have any of this property fence. Someone can just drive in or walk in any which way. One of the first things I would do is to clearly define is put a fence. You could use this corner of the house around like this to that corner of the house, or even bring the fencing around to there. You've now created a situation where you have fencing. Even if it doesn't stop an individual, you've got that psychological deterrent there. And you've got that early warning device fact. You're going to be able to hear them as they come over that, particularly if this is relatively close to the home. Another way you could deploy a fence in an urban situation is if we now say, hey, we were wise. Well, and in many situations, it's just the way it happens. The property line is fenced here. Okay, so you've already got one fence, but you have a big open area here. In this area, this is all just open, and that's nice. It's nice to have big open areas. I prefer large open areas, but all of a sudden there's a spike in violence, maybe in other things that are undesirable that are going on, maybe some looting's taking place, something like that. One of the things you could do if you already have this whole entire area fenced is to take, and it's fenced well, take the rapidly deployable fence. You're going to pay about $100 per 100 feet. And maybe you'll be able to get a little bit cheaper than that with this 4-foot fencing that I have. I mentioned it being 3 feet, it's actually 4 feet tall. You could instantly take this situation here, and in the center of your property, you could run it across like that. What that means is you're going to channel people. You already have fencing, and now somebody's got to make the decision to cross this fence or come through your gate, and then they have another set of fence that they've got to run into. It's not just an open field that they can run across. They're going to hit this fence halfway through. That's going to up the psychological factor there, and they're going to have to be willing to really commit to that. And if you look out and you see somebody, coming across here, you know then that they're really determined in what they're doing. So that would be the way I would deploy the fencing, either around the property or kind of blocking off a section of the home, or doing it halfway through your property line in a suburban situation. In an urban situation where you might have like housing blocks or homes that are very close together. Okay, so let's say that you have a row of houses, 1, 2, 3, 4 homes or apartment complexes or whatever the situation may be. Let's say you've got a road here, something like that. Another way to deploy this fencing in this kind of a situation to create a level of security would be to use the natural factors of the buildings, and you can run fencing like so. Okay, if you're trying to stop individuals there. And then you could run, whether this is homes, depending on how much fencing you have, you might be able to run it like this, or run it the entire length. Again, what you've done is you've created this barrier. Now people aren't going to be running in between these houses or the complexes. You've created a situation, and now you can post individuals to listen or to guard. It would be very easy now to defend this area, or to just watch it. You may not even be responding, but just know, okay, people are coming through these sections, and it would allow you to create that psychological barrier, to have the early warning device feature there, and to just create, hey, this is ours. And you might get people to just go down the road as they recognize these people have banded together. You might not even have to use fencing. You could maybe use furniture or other things to just kind of make a barricade there. Fencing, of course, would probably be easiest, and you're not out of any of your goods that would be in your homes you'd be using. But that would definitely allow you in an urban situation to have a better level of security there, assuming that you can get everybody to work together, which might be your hardest difficulty. I just wanted to leave you with a couple tricks or tips as you plan on or begin constructing your rapidly deployable fencing. And that is, don't run out of zip ties. Have enough of these things. If you're putting the fence up by yourself, zip ties are golden. They really, really help you. They allow you to just zip tie those first sections on and just move. And in some situations, you might just simply use the zip ties. If you're going to be using wire, I found that it was simplest to cut about 8 to 12 inch length pieces and have them already pre-cut as I worked along, and then just bend them and then snip them off. And there's going to be some waste, that's true, but it just makes it a lot easier to put the fencing up. If you're using the kind of poles and the fencing I'm using, you may need longer or shorter pieces depending on how you're tying those together. So don't run out of zip ties, and have enough wire pre-cut into lengths. You'll just move a lot faster as you do that, as you construct the fencing. I hope this video on rapidly deployable fencing has been beneficial to you. My goal here at Survival Solutions USA is to produce quality video reviews on urban, suburban, and wilderness survival issues which you may encounter in your day-to-day lives. Subscribe